Welcome to Transcendental Base of Vedic Knowledge. We are at glimpse-4. We are glimpsing organization features of Shri Durga Saptasati. Today we are going to be face to face with the chapter wise organization. Chapter 1 is of the range of 104 shlokas. Value 104 accepts organization as 13 multiplied by 8. We know that hypercube of 4, the representative regular body of 4 space, is of domain boundary ratio a raised to power 3 is to 8 b raised to power cube. Now this 4 space domain is enveloped within a solid boundary of 8 components. Further, we know that within 4 space domain, 12 as the cube has a degree of freedom of motion, and this degree of freedom of motion for 3 space body within 4 space manifests an additional edge for 12 edged cube. This makes it a 13 edged cube. This 13 edged cube is a setup in terms of which a dynamic state of solid body swaps 4 space domain. 4 space domain is swapped by 13 edged cube, and we know that this domain is enveloped by a solid boundary of 8 components. As such, 13 edged cube will be having an exhaustive coverage, a complete coverage, a full coverage for 4 space domain, as it is enveloped within a solid boundary of 8 components, and it that way will lead us to as many as 13 multiplied by 8 is equal to 104 coordinates or components or structural values. These 104 structural values as such become the basis of the organization features of chapter 1. Chapter 1 of Shri Durga Saptasati is a scripture of 104 shlokas. Value 104 accepts an organization 13 multiplied by 8. Within 4 space domain, 3 space body has a degree of freedom of motion towards the 4th dimension. Hypercube 3 is the representative regular body of 3 space. Cube is a 12 edged setup. Towards the degree of freedom of motion, it manifests additional 13th edge. So this 4 space domain as such is swapped by a 13 edged cube. As we know, there is a solid boundary of 8 components which is enveloping 4 space domain. Therefore, it leads us to 13 multiplied by 8 is equal to 104 structural components, coordinates or values as we may see. A step ahead, chapter 2 of Shri Durga Saptasati is of 69 shlokas range. We know value 69 is equal to 3 into 23. Further, we know that 23 accepts organization 3 plus 5 plus 3 multiplied by 5. We know that 5 space is the transcendental origin of 4 space. Within 4 space, 5 space plays the role of a origin, a transcendental origin. Further, we know that 12 edged cube in its dynamic state has 13th edge which coordinates with the origin. Therefore, a reach from chapter 1 to chapter 2 is a reach within 4 space domain by the 13th edge up till the seat of the transcendental origin. The transcendental origin as such is coordinated by the 13th edge. So chapter 1 takes us to value 104 and chapter 2 takes us a step ahead to value 69. Let us see that 5 space, which is in the role of origin, is a solid dimensional setup. 3 space is playing the role of the dimension of 5 space. Further, we know that this 3 space as dimension and 5 space as domain with the superimposition of 3 space upon 5 space leads us to value 8. Further, we know 3 multiplied by 5 is equal to 15, which is parallel to the solid dimensional frame of 5 dimensions of 5 space domain. Now both these values 8 plus 15 as such amounts to in a sleeping state, means it becomes a state for the transcendental origin at the seat of the origin. It is this value 23 which is available at the origin seat. Further, we know it is a solid dimensional setup. So at the seat of the origin of a 4 space, at the seat of origin of a 4 space, there is a solid order. As such, this value 23 is available towards all the 3 dimensions and it makes a value 69. Further, we know that in Devanagari script this is value 3 and its reflection image is a value 6. It is this feature which deserves to be comprehended well. We know that solid dimensional frame as a setup of 3 dimensions splits into a pair of 3-dimensional frames of half dimensions. It is this split of a 3-dimensional frame into pair of 3-dimensional frames of half dimensions and of opposite orientations. It is this feature which deserves to be comprehended well. Further, we know that 4 space is playing the role of origin of 3 space. As such, with this split, there emerges a 4 space in the role of an origin. And further, we know that 4 space is a space which is of 9 geometries range. G4, 9. There are 9 versions of hypercube 4. It is this availability of value at the center. Now, this 4 space, this all is happening within a 4 space, and 4 space itself is of a spatial order. Being of a spatial order, therefore, the linear progression transits into a circular transition. So from the format of a diameter, there happens to be a transition upon the perimeter, a circumference. With it, we know that within a circle, there happens to be a reversal of an orientation. We start from particular point, at the end we reach back at that same point. It is at the same ment. It is this which brings into a reflection, object image, and the second reflection, because of a spatial order, will take us back again to the same original position. Now, these are the features which are simultaneously at work, in terms of which there happens to be a continuity as well as a transition from the organization format of chapter 1 of 104 shlokas range to chapter 2 of 69 shlokas range. It is this relationship, it is this transition, it is this format, it is this transition, it is this transformation which deserves to be comprehended. One shall sit comfortably and permit the transcending mind to be face to face with this organization feature, which takes us to 104 as a value for the shlokas range of chapter 1 and value 69 as shlokas range of chapter 2. A transition from this 104 value to value 69 is the feature which deserves to be comprehended, and it is with this comprehension we will be face to face and we will be parallel to the organization features of the text of Shri Durga Saptasati. We are chasing initially in terms of the shlokas ranges of the chapters. So each chapter is a particular range of shlokas. This feature as to why chapter 1 is having 104 shlokas, chapter 2 is having 69 shlokas range. This value 104 and value 69 as such are the values which stand coordinated because of the underneath geometric formats. The basic underneath geometric format is of a creator's space. It is of value 4. If we know the NVF means number values formats of 1 to 26 letters alphabet as the English alphabet is, and as is the meters 26 meters, then we know if we write 4 space, then this 4 space as such will lead us to NVF value 104. This 104 along the 26 meters is leading us to a setup of a 4 space. Therefore, the beginning of this organization of the text of Shri Durga Saptasati is a 4 space. We are starting with a 4 space. Now 4 space is having hypercube 4 as its a representative regular body. Within 4 space, 3 space body is having a degree of freedom of motion. The transition from static state to the dynamic state of the solids results into a manifestation of an additional edge for 12-edged cube along the 4th dimension of a 4 space. And further we know that hypercube 4 as the representative regular body of 4 space is having a raised to power 4 is to 8 b raised to power 3 as domain boundary ratio, and it is this setup which gives us a value 13 into 8 is equal to 104. Therefore, we shall sit comfortably and try to be face to face with this organization features, and let us open a new page and let us mention these features as the organization feature of 104 values for the shlokas range of chapter 1 and its transition to value 69 as shlokas range of chapter 2, and these all features happening in between, and these are the features in terms of which when we will have a transition and transformation from chapter 1 to chapter 2, then at a step ahead we will be reaching at the value 44 as chapter 3 shlokas range 44 of chapter 3. We know value 44 is equal to 40 plus 4. This is a reflection pair. This 40 value and 04 value constitutes a reflection pair. Further we know that this value 40 is equal to 4 into 10, and this 4 itself is 4 into 1. Now this in fact becomes a setup of a 11 multiplied by 4. For we know that hypercube 5 is a setup of 11 geometries range, and hypercube 5 is having 11 versions. Now these are the 11 versions of hypercube 5, and we know 4 space is playing the role of a boundary of 5 space. It is this feature which will help us appreciate that when we are initiating the chase on the format of hypercube 4, and when we are having the internal sleeping state for the transcendental origin, thereafter a step comes to be that we reach at the boundary. of a 5 space. The boundary of a 5 space we know is of the format a raised to power 5 is equal to 10 b raised to power 4. There are 11 versions of hypercube 5 and there is 11 geometries range. And this way, when we transition from chapter 1 to chapter 2 takes us to the sleeping state of the transcendental origin, then at the next step it takes us to the boundary of 5 space. Let us recapitulate. Initially we are reaching at the seat of a transcendental origin within creator's space, and thereafter we are reaching at the creative boundary of a 5 space. One shall sit comfortably and one shall sequentially chase this reach from the chapter 1 to chapter 2, then from chapter 2 to chapter 3. Is we see that when we are at the transcendental origin, means 5 space in the role of an origin, then it is here that at this particular sleeping state, now it happens to be in a transcendental expansion, so it becomes a raised to power 5 is to 10 b raised to power 4. That means here happens to be a transcendental cavity. It is this transcendental cavity feature which deserves to be comprehended well. This happens as we know the value 13 accepts an organization. 13 is equal to 4 plus 5 plus 4. Now this means that this reach of the 13th edge in a dynamic state within 4 space with its reach up till the transcendental origin is going to have a split for the 4 space domain. So it happens to be a pair of parts because of the spatial order of, and this gives us to value 30. It is this split which deserves to be appreciated, and for its appreciation let us have again a focus upon value 44 is equal to 4 into 11, and it leads us to 11 geometries range of a 5 space, and here are the 11 versions of hypercube 5. These 11 versions of hypercube 5 as such are responsible for the reach at the value 44. So this transition when is taking us to value 44, and we know 44 as a domain will take us to 42 as a dimension. It is this domain dimension format which will provide us a transition from chapter 3 to chapter 4. In chapter 4 of Shri Durga Sapsati is a scripture of 42 shlokas range. Value 44 and 42 is of coordinated along the format of 44 as domain and 42 as a dimension. The value 42 is a very beautiful value, as it firstly it accepts an organization is equal to a synthesis value of pair of transcendence ranges of a spatial order. Further we know that 42 is equal to 21 plus 22, 21 plus 21. It is going to be parallel to the format of elongation along the format of Sthapatya miring rod synthesized by hypercubes 1 to 6, leading to a format artifices values 1 to 6. Still further, we know that value 42 is the value which accepts an organization 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus respect to 12, which is parallel to the external characteristics of Shad Chakras format. It is here where we must have a pause. We should sit comfortably and let us be face to face with this particular feature of a Shad Chakras format. So human body as such is organized along Shad Chakras format, whose external characteristics are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 and 12, and this is parallel to the boundary components of hypercubes 1 to hypercube 6, as a raised to power n is to 2n, b raised to power n1 is the domain boundary formulation, and for n is equal to 1 we get the boundary components of hypercubes 1 to 6 being of values 2, 4, 6, 8 and 12. It is here where the Vedic system's success comes to be Yatha Pinde tatha brahmande, as in body, so in the universe. So it is this parallel attainment along the common format of Sthapatya ring rod as a Shad Chakras format for a human body, and as Panch Mahabhut organization reaching up to the Surya as the sixth step and the pole star as the seventh step. These are the features because we know 42 is equal to 6 into 7. It is this reach of this value 42 which is of a spatial order for the creators of space, and it is the synthesis value of the pair of transcendence ranges of spatial order. It is parallel to the elongation of a Sthapatya ring rod, and it is parallel to the Shad Chakras format of the human body. And then these external characteristics, Sthapatya ring rod, Yatha Pinde, Yatha Brahmande, Panch Mahabhut format, Shad Chakras format, and the value 42, and reach at chapter 4 of Shri Durga Saptashti. One shall sit comfortably and revisit time and again, beginning with the organization features of chapter 1 as of the format of the creators of space, 4 space, spatial order space, within which the solids are having a degree of freedom of motion, and 3 space with cube as hypercube of 12 edged setup, manifesting 13th edge within 4 space domain for its exhaustive coverage and its coordination in terms of the 8 solid boundary components, leading us to value 104. And from here the transition to the value 69 for the shlokas range of chapter 2. A step ahead, a reach at value 44, and step ahead there being a reach at value 42. Now these 4 steps reach as it is will be taking us to a step ahead to value 129. Chapter 5 of Durga Saptashti is a scripture of 129 shlokas. Now we know value 129 is equal to 3 into 43. Further we know 43 is equal to 15 plus 13 plus 15, and we know within a spatial order as there is a reversal of an orientation, and further as we know that 3-dimensional frame splits into a pair of 3-dimensional frames of half dimensions of opposite orientations. As such, we will be having minus 15, minus 13 is a dimensional synthesis for hypercube minus 13. It is this reach from hypercube 13 to hypercube minus 13 which is the unique attainment of the organization format, which at chapter 5 as a range of value 129 and with NVF of half dimension is equal to 129. These are the features which deserves to be comprehended well. One shall sit comfortably and one shall sequentially reach starting from chapter 1 as of value 104 to reach at value 69 as shlokas range of chapter 2, then at value 44 as shlokas range of chapter 3, then at value 42 as shlokas range of chapter 4, and ultimately at chapter 5 as value 129, which is parallel to half dimension, which is also parallel to the reversal of orientations, and then also having a transition for, and we know that value 13 and value 15 are coordinated as dimension and a domain. Therefore, value 15, which is parallel to the dimensional frame of 5 solid dimensions of 5 space, same as a domain, is having 13, which is equal to 4, 5 plus 4 as a dimension. So this split playing the role of a dimension and solid dimensional frame playing the role of a domain is the attainment, is a big attainment. It is a big leap forward. It is a breakthrough. It is this breakthrough at this stage of chapter 5 which deserves to be comprehended well. It is a big step. It is a big breakthrough. We had initiated ourselves with the dynamic state of a cube, acquiring a 13th edge, and this 13th edge being coordinated with the transcendental origin, a solid dimensional order setup of the transcendental origin of a 5 space, and the value of the dimensional frame of solid dimensional body in the role of an origin of value 15 becoming a domain, and this dynamic state cube which is sweeping 4 space playing the role of a dimension. It is this reach from here that cube went from static state to a dynamic state coordinates with the transcendental origin which is of a solid order and having a dimensional frame of value 15, and it is this reach which gives us a coordination. One may have a pause here and see the prakash, the light is of TC value 13, and tej, the glow of the light as such is a value 15. It is this reach from prakash, from light to tej, glow. It is this reach, it is this attainment, it is this breakthrough which happens up till the reach of chapter 5. A step ahead, now this transcendental dimensional frame is of value 50, and step ahead is a 6 space, 6 space with 4 space in the role of a dimension leading us to value 24. Therefore, transition from chapter 5 to chapter 6 is a transition from the solid dimensional frame of 5 space to the solid dimensional frame of 5 space. We are reaching at a creative dimensional frame of a 6 space. It is going to be reached from 5 space to 6 space. It is reached from 3 space in the role of dimension to 4 space. It is reached from value 15 as the dimensional frame value to value 24. It is this value 24 which deserves to be comprehended well. One shall sit comfortably and permit the transcending mind to face with this transition phenomenon from chapter 5 of shlokas range value 129 to the shloka 6 of shlokas chapter 6 shlokas range value 24. As we have seen, this in fact is going to be transition from the solid dimensional frame of value 15 to a creative dimensional frame of value 24. Further, we know that 24 and 42 constitutes a reflection pair. Therefore, this reach, which was of a spatial order of 4 space leading us to value 4, then is taking us to now in the reverse orientation. 4 is going to value 2, means it is going to be minus 4 reaching at value minus 2. It is this feature which deserves to be comprehended well. One shall be face to face with it as to how the transition from chapter 5 to chapter 6, which is a transition from solid dimensional frame of 5 space to created dimensional frame of 6 space, also is in fact a transition from the spatial order of 4 space to the negative spatial domain with negative creative dimensional order. It is this reach, it is this attainment, it is this breakthrough which deserves to be comprehended well. A step ahead, when we are reaching at the chapter 7, we know here happens to be value 27. Value 27 is of an organization 3 into 3 into 3. So we have originally had a split for a 3-dimensional frame into a pair of 3-dimensional frames of half dimensions. Now we are reaching at a solid 3-dimensional frame which is having a split into a pair of solid 3-dimensional frames of half dimension. So it is a solid dimension half, it is a solid dimension which is half, it is a solid dimension which is a half. So it is this split of a solid dimensional frame into a pair of solid dimensional frames of half dimensions. Further, we know that NVF half is equal to 27. It is this way we can see that sequentially when we had started with the 4-space format with a degree of freedom of motion for 3 space in a static state to a dynamic state, acquiring an additional edge which coordinated with the transcendental origin, and sequentially we have reached at a split for a solid dimensional frame into a pair of solid dimensional frames. One shall sit comfortably and permit the transcending mind to be face to face with these transition steps of a reach from chapter 1 of Shloka's range 104 to chapter 2 Shloka's range of value 69, then chapter 3 Shloka's range of value 44, then the chapter 4 Shloka's range value 42, Shloka 5 Shloka's range of value 129, and then chapter 6 to Shloka's range value 24. A step ahead at this chapter 7 we have reached at value 27, which is parallel to the half solid dimensional frame. The solid dimensional frame splits into a pair of solid dimensional frames of half dimensions. It is this attainment, it is this reach which is the basic breakthrough reach. Step ahead when chapter 8 is giving us to a value 63. Firstly, value 8 we know is equal to 2 raised to power 3. So from 1 raised to power 3 is equal to 1 to 2 raised to power 2 is equal to 8 is the reach, and we know the transcendental value for value 8 formulation is equal to 8. It is this reach which deserves to be comprehended well. How? When we know that hypercircles 1 to 7 increase and hypercircle 8 onwards go on decreasing, then it becomes difficult for the axioms, postulates of the present day mathematics to have a reach at how to have a transition therefrom. But Vedic systems have successfully reached that by reaching at a transition for a linear order 3-dimensional frame to solid order dimensional frame. And then at step further we know we are reaching at value 63, which is giving us in a Devanagari script as this reflection pair. It is this reflection pair which is at work here. Then we know value 63 is equal to 7 into 9. It leads us to 7 into 9 grid. We know the 8 place value system is accommodating all the 63 double digit numbers of 8 place value system along 7 into 9 grid. It is this success, it is this reach, it is this attainment of the Vedic systems which deserves to be comprehended well. The Vedic systems at this phase and stage firstly reach from 1 raised to power 3 is equal to 1 to 2 raised to power 3 is equal to 8. Secondly, it reaches from a 3-dimensional frame of linear axis to a solid dimensional frame of 3 solid dimensions, and thereafter it reaches at from a single digit numbers to a pair of digits numbers. Now it is this pair of digits numbers which is bringing us face to face with the attainment format of the chapter 8. Step ahead at chapter 9 there is a Shloka's range of value 41. It is a beautiful value. It is this value which we know as NVF affine. So NVF affine is of value 41. So it is a affine state. This affine state we know 41 gives us to 13 plus 13 plus 15. We know the pair of values, dimension value 13 leads us to synthesis value 15. Now here we can have a pause and see that we had reached that 43 is equal to 15 plus 13 plus 15. Further we know 41 and 43 are constituting a dimension domain format. Here we know that this is leading us to this synthesis value. But we don't stop here. The 41 is further leading us to 4 square and 4 square and being synthesized by fulfilling the gap with a 9 3 square. It is this setup, it is this value which is going to be responsible for this value being also of chapter 12 as well. Here the chapter 12 is also of Shloka's range 41, because here we are transiting from the linear setups to the spatial setup. And further we know that it is going to be a Divya Ganga Parvaha. It is going to be from a Bindu Sarovar, and we are reaching up till the Swastik Pada along the soul syllable Om, Ek Akshar Brahm. It is going to be a Divya Ganga Parvaha. It is the Parvaha which is responsible for the settlement of the text of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and as well as in the reverse orientation, transcendence upwards is going to be a settlement of a Sama, the Samved Samhita. And here the value 1 to reach up till value 4, it is this reach from Bindu Sarovar to Swastik Pada of value 41, which becomes really a fine value. So these are the features which are also taking us and coordinating chapter 9 with chapter 12. In between there is a beautiful transition steps. Shloka chapter 10 is of value 32, and value 32 we know is equal to 2 raised to power 5. Further we know that if we have a choices from a values range 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and if we want to reach at summation value 6, then we know there are as many as 32 ways, so in which we can reach at value 6. It really is going to be a very blissful exercise that we shall reach at these 32 ways to reach at value 6 by having a choices of values from 1 to 6. It is this which will also help us that NVF of life is equal to 32. So it is going to be a life. It is going to be a feature. It is going to be of value 6. It is going to be value of a Surya. It is going to be value of a first perfect number. How the first perfect number as a Surya Ank as value 6, and we know value 6 is equal to 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3, and it is going to be value of a hypercube 2. It is going to be value of a square. So ultimately it is reach at dimension of a 6 space. So it is this reach here, dimension of dimension, which is beautiful. As we know, its dimension again takes us to value 0, and this value 20 we know is the TCP value of a Ved. It is how the Vedic systems ultimately at the fourth step are going to have a manifestation of a Vedic knowledge in and along the geometric formats. A step ahead, value 55 is the value which gives us 5 into 11, and it is equal to 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. We know there are 11 versions of hypercube 5. We know hypercube 5 is having creative boundary of a 10 components. How the 11 versions comes to even there is no creative component, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, all the 10 are there. Its summation value is 55. So it is the exhaustive end reach of the attainment of the transcendental origin. This is the transcendental flow from the manifested creation. So the format of manifestations, so entire limitations of creative order manifestation as such wither away, and there happens to be a transcendental state, transcendental origin, becoming a transcendental domain, free of its all the creative components. It is this state which in fact is the state which is the state of the attainment of a Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is the overlord of a four space. So we started with four space, and we have reached at the transcendental Lord. We have reached at the creative Lord, Lord Brahma, who meditates within the cavity of his own heart. It is this meditation within the cavity of his own heart upon the transcendental Lord Shiva. So this Transcendental Lord's grace makes Lord Brahma multiplies as 10 Brahmas. It is this multiplication of Lord Brahma as 10 Brahmas is equal to 10 b raised to power 4 as a creative boundary of the transcendental domain. Therefore, Srimad Durga Saptati, its organization format features initially in the form of the settlement of the shlokas ranges of chapter 1 to chapter 13, as these are bring us face to face with the phenomenon of as to how the manifested creations of four space format presided by Lord Brahma, Creator the Supreme, result into a transcendental state, and the enlightenment path is that Lord Brahma meditates within cavity of his own heart, and with the grace of the transcendental Lord, Lord Brahma multiplies as 10 Brahmas. It is this feature which deserves to be comprehended well. One shall be face to face with it. One shall sit comfortably and permit the transcending mind to go the Lord Brahma's way and to attain a transcendental grace and to shun away, to shed away, to wither away, to remove, to be free from all the limitations of the manifested creations of the creators of space and to enter the transcendental domain, the domain presided by the transcendental Lord Shiva, a five-head Lord with triple eyes in each head. Therefore, this attainment of the organization format features of Shri Durga Saptati in the form of the settlement of the shlokas ranges of total summation value 700 comes to be to reach from four space to the Creator Supreme Lord Brahma, and the Lord Brahma during the process as such attains a transcendental grace and multiplies tenfold. It is this reach for the creators of space from the role of a domain to a role of the creative boundary of the transcendental domain. So it is this reach for the creators of space to play the role of a creative boundary of the transcendental domain, and as a result thereof, Lord Brahma multiplies tenfold as 10 Brahmas. Sadhakas, with glimpsing and imbibing of this state of a knowledge, will have a takeoff for the sadhana. So, from this phase and stage of Vidya, one is to reach and take the first step. One should have an initiation for the sadhana, and this sadhana is going to be the Lord Brahma's way, Creator's way, the way Lord Brahma, Creator the Supreme, by meditating within the cavity of one's own heart, having attained the transcendental grace and multiplied tenfold, and with it the transcendental domain came into play, and all the limitations of the creative manifestation had resiled back, have reached back at the boundary of a Shivlok. So, limitations of manifested creations can be put in their proper place at the boundary, and at the center the transcendental domain is to have its play. It is this transcendental play which is the play of the goddess. It is the goddess. It is the transcendental domain coming into play. It is this coming into play of the transcendental domain is going to be the ultimate aim of the sadhana. All sadhakas do sadhana to attain this transcendental state. From next lesson, we will be taking up the another organization format features, which will be how the shlokas ranges are organized as vachas are the shlokas and shlokas. Therefore, for these values and these geometric formats, as these I have been visited by us today, will be further be reached at for further insight by having further transcendence within these geometric formats to reach at the organization as vachas, as are the shlokas, as shlokas, and like that we shall be progressing the transcendental attainment for being face to face with transcendental basis base of Vedic knowledge. Thank you very much.